Welcome to the Preparing First Responder for Behavior Crisis. We are glad you guys have joined us today for this session. In the interest of time, the speaker will introduce themselves.
Oh, they said in the interest of time, I'm going to introduce myself. I wasn't prepared for that. But my name is Nichole Pangle. I am the executive director of the ARC of Northern Shenandoah Valley. I will get a little bit more into my story. But first and foremost, I am a mom, and my experience with my son is what brought me to this presentation today. Back to you.
Of course, my name is Paul Moretti. I am Alliances with the Alley Alliance. Be sure to check their schedules for exciting opportunities during the convention. Please stop by the Quillo Connect table, which is outside in the hallway, over the next few days so you can learn more. Thank you for joining us today. The session leader, the floor is yours. And thank you so much for coming to the session. Enjoy the rest of your day. Here you go, Nichole.
Paul, you are so steady. Thank you, Paul. I don't know how I'm going to follow up after Paul. Isn't he like the kindest little gentleman you've ever met? Okay, so I am quite nervous. This is my first time actually doing this presentation in person. So I'm going to start with a dad joke. Ready? Y'all ready for it? Hold on a second. I've got to find it. I completely forgot what it was. Had something to do with a duck. Yeah, absolutely. A deep breath here. Okay, here we go. How does the duck detective always solve the case? He quacks the case. He quacks the case. Good, bad, or indifferent. It was a dad joke, even though I'm a mom. So I want to thank you all for coming to my presentation today. See if I can, oh gosh. Let's see. Okay, my arrows are not working. Heather, poor Heather. Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you. All right, so my name is Nichole Pangle. I am the executive director of the ARC of Northern Shenandoah Valley. I've served as executive director for about 12 years. A little bit of my story is I served as executive director. During that time, my son was diagnosed with autism. So not only did I get to experience things as a professional, I got to experience everything growing as a profession. So my son is now 15 years old. It's nice to have some friendly faces in here who actually know my son. So I'm really glad to have that. My son has profound autism and intellectual disabilities. My son's father is also a law enforcement officer. My brother works for the Pennsylvania State Prison System, and my adopted brother used to run the York County Prison in Pennsylvania. So law enforcement is very prevalent in my family. So this presentation came about due to the experience of my son and local law enforcement. During COVID, as many of you probably have experienced, my son went into severe behavioral crisis with the change in schedule, with the change in routine, not going to school every single day. We had a lot of crisis, and not being able to go to Target, which is one of his favorite things to do, not being able to get his Swedish fish every day was definitely a challenge. So we had many times where we would have behavioral crisis and needed the assistance of law enforcement. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why you need to prepare and how you can best prepare for those crises. So many families, when you experience a crisis, you're going to need to call law enforcement, especially if you have a loved one who has severe aggression, which my son does. So oftentimes law enforcement is taught to use force. It's a sad fact, but it is something that they do. It's always officer safety when they are responding. That response, especially for many of our folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, is going to be traumatic. And it's also going to generally be contrary to what is going to work. My son, if you put your hands on him, he's going to fight 10 times harder, and it's going to prolong the experience. So that was something that was very important. That's kind of where the wheels started turning, saying, hey, maybe we need to start talking about this. So according to research from the Ruderman Family Foundation, 33 to 50% of all use of force incidents belong to someone with a disability. That's a lot of folks. So we really need to work collaboratively with law enforcement and our first responders. And many agencies, they want to support our friends that have intellectual and developmental disabilities, but they don't have the funding, they don't have access to the families, and they don't have the resources. So you may be just a parent, as they said in the beginning, but you're not just a parent, you can make a difference. So what I am going to talk about a little bit today, and if anytime you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. This is kind of an informal presentation. I want to hear from you, so don't be afraid to shout anything out. We're going to talk about general information that you'll need to share, the medical information, your home and environment. We're going to talk about scenarios and triggers that may lead to the response of law enforcement and individual response methods. I don't know if you all got this, but did you guys get a guide with your pet? Okay, so I will make sure that you get one. I actually have all of this information in a fillable guide so that you can have access to that as well. All right, so general information. First and foremost, you're going to want to provide the full legal name, including any nicknames. My son, I will reference him a lot in this presentation because he's first and foremost in everything I do. My son's name is Matthew. Very rarely will he answer to Matthew. He goes by Maddie. So when law enforcement rolls into my house, they say Matthew, he's not going to respond. They say, hey, Maddie. Oh, hey, I know these guys. So make sure you include their full legal name, including any nicknames. You obviously want to put the address of the response. So if you're at Target, you want to make sure you have that address. If you're at your home, you want to make sure that you have your correct home address. One of the big things I've learned from law enforcement, a lot of times they will still use Google to find your address. So if you live in a newer development, make sure Google is on check. Make sure that that address is there. If not, in this packet of information that you can submit, you will want to make sure that you offer clear and concise directions. Description of your home and neighborhood. So for example, I live in the Sensony Glen neighborhood. My house is the third house on the left on Main Street. It has a blue door and there may be like a big tree in the front. Whatever is going to quickly and appropriately identify your home, make it as easy as possible for them to come to your house and say, that is the correct one. Something that I actually do, I have a decal sticker in my front window that says emergency responders. There is an autistic individual that is in this home. So that's another key way that they know this is the right house that we need to go into. You want to provide a physical description of the person, including any notable scars, marks, and medical equipment. I am aware that some of you may work in group homes, you may work in sponsored residential, and sometimes you might have multiple crises going on at the same time. So you want to make sure that they are responding appropriately to the correct person. This is also helpful if an individual is a runner and who may elope so that they are looking for the correct person. Any questions on the general information? Yes. Okay. Okay.
Being diagnosed.
Sure.
Still trying to understand development trauma and
Sure.
and we've had a call captive several times because the depression has escalated to the point of fear.
Sure.
But what would be a different description that I could put on my door? Or, when I call, I ask for CIT, but if there's not time for that to say, this is what's happening.
So honestly, we're going to get into that a little bit, but you could put DD, like developmental disability or intellectual, you could put any number of things. You could just put disability, and that's kind of a blanket term that you could put out there as well. It's whatever you're comfortable with, because we are talking about things that might be HIPAA related as well. So if it's in your own home, you can put whatever you want.
Understanding and as far as knowing and diagnosing.
No.
Okay, so my son is under CIU.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. So what I would do is maybe put like a decal of an image on there. And then in this packet that you would provide to law enforcement, it has this sticker on the door. So they know that this is the actual home that they're supposed. You could do a symbol, you could do whatever. So it's nondescript. It doesn't identify him. Absolutely. Yes.
It's messy.
Okay. Okay.
Is to not only law enforcement,
Mhm.
but also to those search and rescue teams. That way,
Mhm. Just take it. Any information I have here, you are welcome to use, share, put out, whatever you want. I have presented this at the ARC National Convention at Milestones Autism, and honestly, this is something I did on my own, so please share it. It's not copyrighted. I don't care what you do with it. As long as it keeps people safe, that's all that matters to me. So, yes, sir.
Do you have any advice on 911 understanding?
That's a really, really good question. Oh, let me think about that because that's a really, really good. Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, yes, yes. Mhm. Some areas do have 988 and I will talk about that, but it is not statewide yet. So it is, and they have, I believe, until 2026 to implement it statewide. So it's mental health plus developmental disabilities are included in that as well. Yes. Mhm. Yep. Okay, so we're going to offer the physical description of a person. We're also going to talk about any medical equipment. So especially like if there's a person that has a feeding tube or something like that, they want to be aware so they're not tripping over medical equipment, they're not knocking over oxygen, any of those types of things and things that the individual may need. All right, so we're going to talk about medical information that you should provide, diagnosis or diagnoses. So this is really what you're comfortable with. If you are not comfortable with this, you do not have to put this at all. I specifically put that because there are several law enforcement officers and first responders that are trained in response to individuals with autism in my locality. So they are familiar, and added bonus because I worked in the court system before, I know some of the individuals who would be responding. So I myself was comfortable putting that information there. It's up to you. This is not required, but yes. Okay.
I've like over down special needs, but they didn't seem like they cared. The hospitals like they cared.
Well, hopefully you will learn. Well, hopefully you can use the information that you received today and use that to develop better relationships with your local law enforcement and first responders. Okay. Absolutely. One of the other things I'm going to recommend is medication and notable side effects. Specifically, if a person is in such a situation where they may need to be transported in an ambulance or to the hospital, you want to make sure, like if they're trying to give a sedative or something like that, it's not going to interact with anything that they are already taking, because that would be a big no-no. Any notable side effects that an individual might have. So I'll share a story about my son. During COVID, we had him on a specific ADHD medication. Didn't think it was working until every day it was, which stood for cupcakes, cupcake, cupcake, cupcake. That's all we wanted. So every day for about a month, we had a meltdown over cupcakes. So the medication was actually working. And it took a little bit for all of us to realize, oh, that's working. And that's something that our law enforcement should know, because if we say cupcake, we're going to trigger more of a meltdown. So yes, you have a question.
And got something
Mm-hmm,
and had pill packs of pills
mm-hmm,
and the bubbles, and my staff brought the bubbles, so they wouldn't be my pills.
mm-hmm.
Well, we ended up having to give a whole pill back to the head, the side cuts with the top, of the one, of pills and bubble packs. And when I went from different levels of treatment, because I was, had an infection,
Mm-hmm.
I finally went to the lower, which, you're better, you're not transmitting it.
Okay.
They have lost my pill back.
Oh, well, the medications we're talking about right now, we're telling law enforcement and first responders what we're taking if there's an emergency. So that's good for that, but we're gonna kind of focus on this right now, on getting people prepared. Yes,
How many people knew about that 586 before we got passed in this room?
not many probably.
Because that's the first time I ever heard of it, by the way.
Yes,
And I'm gonna spread the word through Chesterfield, and I would like to spread it through the state. But
thank you. Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Ms.
I
Mullany.
appreciate it. All right, so we are also going to add emergency contacts to, can I have just a minute? Let me finish this slide and then I'll get to your question, okay? Emergency contacts, and I always say put your emergency contacts in there as well, because I have had many concussions from my son. And there have been times that I was very close to falling down the stairs. If I'm incapacitated, my son does not speak, and they're not going to know who to call for me. So make sure you have an emergency contact for your loved one that has experienced crises, and for yourself as well, and anyone who may be a caregiver as well, in case you are not able to answer any questions. Another thing that we added were specialists and behavioral supports. So there were many times that we needed to contact my son's behavioral therapist to come to the house, and he would work collaboratively with law enforcement. Again, it was just another level of support that he could take over, and law enforcement could be in the background to assist. Yes, I will answer your question now.
Okay,
As you said, caregiver, did his medication may want more, because I have that experience with medication. Also, for me personally, I can't be on stimulants, so.
Okay, so that would be really good for someone to know in case they were trying to give you one. So very good point.
Yeah. Good. Is that all the waking, was that open and knowing?
No, I don't want to, I just want to say that's okay. I have some other questions to answer, but yep, nope, that's really good for them to know. Yes, ma'am.
Your example about getting a concussion,
Mhm.
a law enforcement comes in,
Mhm.
maybe you were able to call 911 before.
Mhm. Yep.
Would you post this somewhere in your home so that they could see all this information about your child?
We could, but I'm also going to give you how you get this entered into a national database as well. Yes. So even though it's a national database, certain localities, which we found, I live in a town that has its own police force, which is in a wider county, which has surrounding counties. My son loves car rides. We would travel around a lot. So we made sure every place that we were going had this information so that they were all prepared.
no one has in the chat box, right?
Oh, thank you. Nope, nothing. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So home details, you want to give as much information about your home as possible. So notable features of your home. So again, on the third house on the left, I have a green door. I have a pink tree outside. That's the quickest way to get into my home. So many of our autism families particularly will have security systems. How many of you do? Okay. Because you might have someone that is a runner that might get out and you need to see which way they're going, right? So if you have a security system and you have it set, it's really going to be loud, and you don't want to set off even more of an issue if there's a crisis going on. My home, I have a keypad for entrance into my home because it's not really a house, it's kind of a therapy session. You all know what I'm talking about. You have people in and out of your home all the time. So we have a keypad that people could punch in and out of the house. So one of the things that we actually did is if I was not able to get to the front door in time, law enforcement and first responders had their own bypass information. So, and you're able to tell who's coming into your home. So you do have to put some trust in that situation. However, in my situation, it was helpful to do that. One of the big things families don't realize is your animals are a big deal to law enforcement and your first responders. So my son actually has a service dog. So the service dog, he will try and participate during a crisis. He will try and lay over, he will try and do behavior disruption, all of those things. Now to law enforcement, they're like, oh, that's a nosy dog. Like that dog is really in the way of what we're trying to do. No, we need to tell law enforcement this dog is actually trying to do their job. And this is how the dog could be utilized. Now I have 2 other dogs that are not service animals, and they are not nearly as nice as the golden. I have a chocolate lab who is loud and wants to be in everyone's business. And I also have a Great Dane who is 7 months old, and he's huge. He's huge and he looks really scary, even though he's a big klutz like I am. So, when they walk in the house, they might be afraid of that animal and they might hear that dog barking and be like, oh no, we are in danger. Nah, I'm putting that dog outside. Or if the dogs are out here and you have someone, put them outside for me. Like that is a way that you can assist during a crisis situation. So, also, there is bias against certain types of animals. Pit bulls are Rottweilers, Dobermans, all of those types of things. If you have a dog that's trained to protect your home, they need to know that as well, because they may need to send a specific officer just to handle the dog. So unfortunately, animals do get shot when police do response. So if you want to keep your animal safe, make sure that you tell them. Yes, ma'am.
Like what specific, like when you say a specific officer that's trained, you mean like a canine officer that's trained, or what type?
Just like an officer that is comfortable. Sometimes they'll send out animal control who have certain skills that are able to do that. That's not always the case, but if they know, hey, there's a dog that might be barking or a little more aggressive, they know to send someone out that's like, okay, I'm handling this dog so you can handle the crisis. The other thing that you always want to let people know are their weapons in the home. Again, I'm from a law enforcement family. There have been weapons in my home. You need to know, does the person have access to the weapons? Are the weapons locked up? Are they safe? Do they have any type of access? So, or is there anything that they will specifically use in the event of a crisis? Again, going back to my son, he loves Coke Zero. Coke Zero cans are really heavy when they're hurled at your head. So that is definitely something that we warned law enforcement. If he has a can of Coke Zero, you better watch your head because it might be used as a weapon. So anything that they may pick up or utilize against law enforcement, let them know. The more information they have, the better it is for you.
Well, with your husband being a cop, does he?
Not husband. Nah. Oh.
Watch out, my son's, has something in his hand, watch out, beware.
Nah, it didn't work like that in my house.
It should, right?
It should, but nah, it's all right. He's not in my house, so yeah, no, I drink Coke Zero, my son does too. So yes, ma'am.
Service dogs.
Because I've even seen doctors tell their clients that they're required to go through training school and things like that, even though they're not.
So service dogs, because I am a service dog handler for my son, we do a third party. They don't need to go through specific training. They need to be task trained to mitigate the person's disability. And that's all you need to say. That's all you need to say. And if they want to get ridiculous over it, they can, you can file a complaint with the DOJ. So
Actually, I
that's,
can answer that question too, because I know a friend that just got a blind service dog. Actually,
Mhm.
he had to go down to Florida to get trained, actually.
yes, but that's what, they don't have to have specific training, or they need to be able to mitigate a disability. So there's certain things that they have to be able to do, but it's not required to have any specialized training. People train their own service dogs anyway. Crisis scenarios. Okay, so we want to give them an idea when they're coming into our home, what may have triggered this incident. Okay, going back to my son. My son loved cupcakes and Coke Zero. So as part of his behavior plan, he was not allowed to have cupcakes except for birthdays because it triggered many meltdowns. So when law enforcement rolls into my house and they're like, Maddie, what's going on? And we're like, oh, he really wants a cupcake. Oh, Matt, so here, why don't we just give you a cupcake? No, you are messing up my style here. We want them to know that when they roll into my house, you are not to say cupcake. You are not to offer him a Coke Zero. You are not to tell him it is too early for a Coke Zero. You're not going to say any of that kind of stuff because you are going to escalate the situation. I don't want them to say any of those things. So you want to let them know this is what's going on. If there are certain keywords that are going to trigger that person, like my son also likes car rides. He would always have a meltdown in the morning because he was waiting for his car. And the rule was no car rides before school. So there were many times that I had to call law enforcement because my son wanted a ride. And there were times, well, Matt, it's too early for a ride. No, you can't talk about that. Just handle the situation at hand. This is what it is. Don't talk about this. This is what's okay to say. Can I get to you in just a minute?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any questions so far about crisis? Oh, thank you. Yep, no chat questions yet, but thank you so much for. Oh. Not yet, I don't see it, but thank you. Okay, so engaging and response. So there could be two ways this works out. Number one, your loved one or the individual you're serving is really going to be super excited that law enforcement or first responders are in your house, or they're going to be completely freaked out. It's usually one way or the other. Sometimes people will have crisis because they want to get to know their first responders. That has happened many times, but there's many times that when a first responder rolls in, the badge, the glare off of the badge is going to stress them out. All of that equipment is going to stress them out. Seeing a gun in their home is going to stress them out. You need to let them know this is what to expect. This is how they're going to react to you. They may be fearful. They may want to come up and hug you. They may come for your weapon. Those are all types of things that may happen, and you need to let them know. Again, we're trying to prevent injury. We're trying to keep everyone safe in this situation. So you need to let them know exactly what is going to happen. And we're going to talk about roll call. We're going to talk about a couple of different things about how you can see how your loved one, if they haven't met a first responder, how they may react. So you also want to let them know what they may see in your house. There are some individuals who do restraint. There are individuals like my family that use the Ukeru method. Is anyone familiar besides Megan? Okay, so, okay, and that's, I'm sorry that you did. So Ukeru is a system that you do not go hands-on, you use blocking pads. And so when law enforcement rolled into our house the first time, they had no idea what Ukeru was, and it looked like an MMA match. They were like, what is this here? And like, no, this is our way of keeping our son safe. We worked in a triangle. There were 3 people. There were people blocking the doors. There were people blocking the window. So it's very different to see if you're not used to it or expecting it. So it was definitely a shock to them. But then afterwards, they were like, oh, that's cool. And when we would call law enforcement, we always had a pad near the door in case they needed to grab one, because that was some way that they could assist. And then you want to detail how you want them to assist. Like I said, with my son, you come into my house, you put him on the floor, you restrain him. It is not going to be a good look for you. It is going to heighten the situation. My son also has seizures, so you definitely don't want to restrain someone if they're having a seizure. A lot of times his meltdowns could be triggered by that. So you want to make sure that they are safe. You want to tell them, hey, it's okay to go hands-on with our individual, or it's not okay to go hands-on with our individual. So when I would call law enforcement, if I was by myself, I would say, this is what I want you to do. I want you to come into my house. I want you to stand by the door. And your job is to keep him from getting out the door or busting my windows. That is what I need for you to do. I need you to be there in case I am incapacitated, that I cannot make decisions, that I am hurt. That is what your job is. And you know what? They listened. They sit there, they watch, they stand by the door. Hey, Maddie. Sometimes they talk, sometimes they don't. That's something you also want to say. My son gets triggered by a lot of words. So when you roll into my house and there's a crisis, be quiet. Don't say anything. If your loved one is agitated by words, tell law enforcement, I need you to be quiet. I don't want you to speak. Don't talk about this. Don't say anything like that. It's really important. Just think about all those crises you have and what's going to make things run smoothly for your loved one. Okay, so CAD. This is a national database for information that is sent directly to responding officers. So this is fire, EMS, rescue, law enforcement. So basically, when you call and talk to a dispatcher, they send information to law enforcement and it comes up on that lovely big old computer that's in their car. So this information that I'm giving you that you can provide to law enforcement can come up. So it can say, do not go hands-on, has autism, may go for weapons, different things like that, so that they are aware. My son had a pretty significant meltdown when I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and he, the officer got all the information from CAD and he waited at the certain side of the house and he's like, is it okay for me to do this? Is it okay for me to do this? It was very well done. It couldn't have run more perfectly. And he said, that's because I had the information that was in the CAD system. So it does help. Now, again, even though it's a national database, you do want to have this information. If you're going to be traveling to different localities, make sure you give it to them, because not everyone's going to have it. I found that out, even though it's national. It's so. Hi, Lucy. Hi, Lucy. Okay. All right. So, yeah, you can have that information there. You want to make sure that everyone that they're going to encounter has information for you. This information that you're going to collect, you're going to give to your dispatch supervisor. So you're going to want to contact your sheriff's office, your police department, whatever it is that you have, and you're going to ask who the dispatch supervisor is. As we are mostly all parents and providers in here, you're going to want to email it so that there's no excuse it didn't make it in the mail. You have receipt of it. You have proof that it was sent. And I would ask for verification that it was entered into the CAD system.
Okay. What does CAD stand for actually?
You know, I really don't know. All I know is it is CAD. Computer automated something or other. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it is, but during the crisis, so dispatch is, yeah. Law enforcement, first responders, they all have their own feelings with dispatch. When you contact, sometimes dispatch is very curt, sometimes they are not. Sometimes they will ask a million questions while you are in crisis as well. The most important thing that I have found, I will tell them that the information is in the CAD system. Sometimes they will be like, okay, let's pull up that information. Other times they'll be like, what is height, weight, scars, marks, notable features? They'll ask what's going on, what set them off, how, you know, they'll ask a million questions. The best thing I can tell you is be short, be concise, and be respectful, because they're the ones sending people to your home. If they're asking for additional information, just give it to them, because that could delay response if you don't. Okay, so safety plans. For those of you that are parents, how many of you have other children in your home? Other children and pets? Okay, so it's very important to have a safety plan for them. I have a 10-year-old daughter, and oftentimes she would be terrified during a meltdown. There had been times that she had been hit. So we developed a safety plan for her. This is what, when Matthew starts yelling and starts getting vocally rising, when he starts stamping his feet, when he starts smacking the walls, this is when you need to get to your safe space. This is where you need to run out of the house and go to a neighbor. This is when you need to do this. So when A happens, we all know about ABA, antecedent, behavior, whatever. When this trigger happens, this is when you know you need to react. This can also be for other people in your home. If you have ABA workers, if you have staff members that just really need some support, when we see this happening, we know this is the point of no return and you're going to need law enforcement. This is when you need to act. This is exactly what happens when you need to do that. You also want to talk about safe places and actions within your home. I also worked as a domestic violence coordinator before. So the one thing I can tell you is never go into the bathroom in a crisis. There's only one door out, and there's a lot of things that you can hit your head on. So a lot of times children will go into a bathroom that is the least safe place that they can go. So find out, hey, the basement is a safe place that you can go. In your room is a safe place you can go. Safe places and actions outside the home. We had an incident on a very, very cold day one time, and my daughter was absolutely terrified and ran out of the house with no shoes, and our police chief came by and picked her up and took her to the neighbor. So we had identified other individuals in the neighborhood who are safe. So one of the other things that we've done is neighborhood safety. So my community has a Facebook page where all the neighbors can communicate. Most communities do have those things. So what I did is provided all the information on Matthew. If you see Matthew outside by himself, he is not supposed to be there. If he is screaming and yelling, do not approach him. Do not touch him. You may need to call 911. And then we ask for people, hey, if there is an incident, who would be willing to, number one, help out? Number two, who would be willing to take Lily or the animals in? We had an influx of people. I am very, very blessed. I have a very, very strong village of individuals. So it's really important. I know a lot of times as parents, we get stuck in these situations where we don't want to reach out. We can't reach out for help, but you need to have your village, especially when it comes to the safety of others in your home. And then we talk about, when do you need to call 911? Again, signs that the safety plan needs to be implemented. If Matthew starts banging on the wall, if he puts a hole in the wall, that's a sign. Please call 911. Yes.
Another good site actually is My Neighborhood through Facebook, actually.
It is? Okay. I didn't know that. But yes.
Will neighbors still call 911 even if he's on your property, even if he's still screaming and stuff?
Yes. Yes.
They should just let you know. Now, instead of.
Well, there are times.
Law enforcement, instead of sending another person out. That's what I would do if I was.
Oh, well, he's not there. So it's, I don't have to worry about that. Yeah. Well, there's oftentimes, that it takes multiple individuals to intervene with my son. So sometimes, actually, my neighbor across the street is the strength coach for the football team at our local university. We trained him on Ukuru. We had him come over, and there's many times that he has responded. And it's like, okay, what do I need to do? Okay, block the pads. He's football coach, or strength training, he knows how to use that stuff. But there are times, especially if I am alone, that neighbors need to know it's time to call 911. I might not have a phone on me. Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh. Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and also when I moved into the neighborhood, my son is very, very loud. Megan can attest. He loves to yell. And so having people know that it's okay that he's yelling, he is not in crisis. No one is hurting him. That is his joyful noise. So just ignore it. It's perfectly fine. So just letting your neighbors know and people in your vicinity know what your child is like. Get them to know your loved one when they are not in crisis. That is a huge key. Okay, so developing relationships. If you take nothing from this presentation, take this. You need to develop relationships with your first responders. Plain and simple. Meet them, know them. It's going to be a lot easier on you. It's going to be a lot easier on your loved one if they know who they are dealing with. So take them to roll call. Contact your sheriff, contact your police department. Say, hey, can I have 5 minutes for my son or daughter to come in and introduce themselves? Let them see your loved one when they're not in crisis. My kid is incredible. My kid, he's an amazing, amazing little guy. But many times law enforcement didn't see that. They only saw him in crisis. I'm like, nah, you need to meet my son when he is having a good day. So it humanizes him. It humanizes your loved one. So go into those roll calls. Schedule meet and greets at your home. Hey, can you send maybe 2 or 3 officers to the house just to see my son playing basketball outside? Can you see them just whatever, national night out? That is a huge opportunity for families to meet law enforcement and first responders. So make sure, like, anytime that you can do those meet and greets, or you know that police departments or whatever are going to have booths out there, get to know them. One of the cool things that I want to say it was the Arc of Northern Virginia did, they actually set up practice runs with police. So they had police out there, and then individuals with disabilities could go up and meet them and say, okay, if I were to run into law enforcement, this is how I would react. This is how I could talk to them. This is what you might see from me. So it gives them an opportunity to advocate for themselves, gives them an opportunity to be able to speak and get comfortable with law enforcement. Because if I had not been in a law enforcement family, I mean, police are scary. You know, they can arrest you, they can do many things. And I assume that is the same for our friends with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm sure it's scary.
Yeah, one of the chat.
Oh, I do. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Arc of Nova, yes. And we have another event in Fairfax and Arlington in October. All are welcome. So Arc of Nova, if you can make it, go to that. Lucy is absolutely wonderful. And it just looked like an incredible program. So kudos to them for starting that. Ask your local law enforcement, hey, can we do an autism friendly or an IDD friendly event where, you know, you come out and you meet our folks, get a moon bounce, do something, you know, make it super simple, where they can see your loved one and learn not to be afraid. Yes, ma'am.
We went up there, they were not friendly, and I can't take my son out,
Sure.
and then be negative situation.
Sure. So your chief or your sheriff, go straight to the top. Honestly, because especially if it's a sheriff, they're elected. So you have more leverage if you want to make a good statement. You know, sheriffs are politicians. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Go straight to that sheriff. Go straight to the sheriff. Okay. Also, whoops, let me go back. Whoops, hold on. Yes.
Fairfax is in Shenandoah.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Hold on a second. There we go.
One question.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
In Chesterfield.
Okay. Watch. Oh. Just FYI. First Watch is a,
It's a great restaurant. It's a great restaurant.
that's from,
Yes.
Oh,
One of the, yeah, hold on.
Chesapeake. That's what she's asking.
Oh, okay. I don't know if Chesapeake has a First Watch. No. But there's also, I mean, you can do coffee and cups. Like, there's so many ways that you can get invested. And one of the things that, who doesn't like food? Who is unhappy with a taco in front of them? Nobody. Take tacos to your law enforcement. Take them dinner. We used to have Matthew go once a quarter and deliver pork barbecue and sandwiches and different stuff to our local police department, because then they got to see Matthew without crisis. They got to see him in a good shape, and they got to see him like giving them food. Who doesn't want free food, especially when you're eating junk on shift? So, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Richmond Conventions. Was in a wheelchair and he starts sticking up like the wet mop signs and throwing them into the audience. Yelling, hitting people as he rolled down the aisle. We tried to intervene, but it's dangerous. So hurt people. He's strong, he's got Popeye arms. We had like 15 cops show up. I told them to call the attention to call cops. And they come. We had gotten them out into the side hallway of Richmond Convention Center. And I explained to them, this is important for you to understand. I have all the stuff that you had. That was great, by the way.
Thank you.
But I emphasized to them, this is a medical intervention. This is not a coercive intervention. You need to follow my instructions. I'll tell you exactly what to do. I was able to give them, just like you hear the paramedics calling the hospital. You know, this is a 36-year-old man with Down syndrome, comorbidity of bipolar, and intermittent explosive disorder, and severe expressive repressive language delay. They know that language. And so when you start talking like that, they're going to listen to you with a little more respect than I don't know what happened. So you have to
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Instruction about what to do. You need to tell them that you need a
yes
for them personally. You need to supervise, because this 6 months after Ethan Saylor was killed for the very same reason, a CIT trained officer at a daycare program put a knee in my son's back and
I'm very sorry to hear that.
And I said, get your knee out of it. We're trained, we know what we're doing. And his boss was there. I said, you need to get your knee out of his back right now. And he did. But there was a moment or two where he hesitated. And that moment or two can be a bad thing.
It absolutely can be.
But, you know, hey, we're learning restraints are just to be momentary and necessary. That you can restrain and then back. He's on the floor, he's not practicing. And so teaching the cops these things is really important.
It absolutely
is. They're coming to a domestic situation. They're full of adrenaline when they get that radio call, and you got to calm that down. Because that'll telegraph.
Oh, absolutely. Especially if your loved one feeds off of energy, which my child does. So it's very important. Walk in my house calmly, coolly, collectively. So I will get questions in just a second here. Can I take that at the end? Let me just finish up because we only have a couple more minutes, okay? Hold on a second. Let me get to this. I was going backwards.
Nicole, I
Okay.
did look up. There is a first version.
Okay.
Chesapeake Burn.
All right. And this is something like you don't have to have a first watch. You can do that as a parent. You are not just a parent. You can do things. You can make the difference for your loved ones. But there are some different resources. There is a it's called ICE for Autism app. It's $2.99 in the App Store. And it's basically a lot of the same information that I've covered that is available on a phone or a tablet. So if your loved one uses a communication device, they can have that information in there and you could put that in your packet. Hey, if you run into my loved one in the community, you can access this app and it's going to give you all the information that you need. There are local crisis supports. So most of us are familiar with the REACH program. You can access that. And again, the Marcus alert is coming through. It's not everywhere right now. Instead of calling 911, you call 988 and it will direct you to crisis supports and also law enforcement if needed. So there are a variety of different options that are available for crisis supports as resources. So I hope this information is helpful to you. I hope that you are able to take it back to your communities and use it. I will ask Tanya if I can get this emailed out or if they can upload it to the site so that you have this information. Again, it is a fillable guide. Please use it. Send it out to as many people as you want to. I don't care what you do with it. I just want people to be safe. I want our loved ones to be safe as well. So, yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I do. Before Colin.
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Absolutely.
feels. To make sure that we're sensitive to that. It's not non-compliant. It's real. It's really scary. The thought, just for me, having black sons, of giving them police that close my it made me
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I said that for my family, for my situation, that is okay because of my experiences. But I mean, do with this as you need. Like, you don't have to give all of this information. This is just information that I found has been helpful, that law enforcement has told me is helpful as they are responding. Yes, ma'am. Oh, go ahead. Yellow shirt first.
There is it's Pinnacle Drive in Shenandoah.
Correct, yeah.
Might be around Greenbrier, someone doesn't be here.
All right, blue shirt.
So I know this, once you put it into the CAD, which somebody asked, huh?
You know what?
Computer assisted dispatch.
There you go. Thank you, Heather.
I know the local, and maybe like, a lot of the localities in different states. I asked a lot of these state police, like, don't, and please don't ask me where I live. The state police also work with the local police.
Sure.
So they're useful to try to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
They may see even, state.
Oh, absolutely. There's many times an individual may have a crisis in the car. My son definitely, he loves to have crisis in the car, loves it. So it would be important to share that information. So that's why I'm saying, take it to your local agencies, share it as much as you can. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm like trained American police, so.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so how can you get cops to understand that they don't have to call APS?
Adult Protective Services. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, wow. I really do not have an answer to that question, but I will think on that, and I would be glad to communicate with Tanya to see if there's a way that we could answer that, because that is a great question. Oh, absolutely. Oh, trust me. Yeah, absolutely. Because if you see someone laying on the floor or they're having continual crises, they're like, maybe this individual needs to be in a group home or stuff like that. And that's not the case. Correct. Oh, gosh. Oh, well, then I would be talking to your social services and talk to your sheriff and police department. I would absolutely talk to them and say, I have the proper supports. I have the supports I need to be able to live on my own. Absolutely. Yep. Yes. Please take this, use it if you can. I hope it is helpful. I hope that you are able to take it back to your communities, and I hope it keeps your loved ones safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.